I'm dating coach and relationship expert Jennifer Hurwitz, and welcome to Doing Relationships Right. Raw, authentic, and insightful, this podcast is a no bullshit look at all things dating and relationships. The good, the not so good, and the what the hell was that? No worries, I've got you, and we'll figure it all out together without taking ourselves too seriously here on Doing Relationships Right. Here you are at midlife. Your boobs have entered a new zip code. You have genes older than your daughter's new fiance. And now you're single again. But is that cause for a crisis? Hell no. It's time to pick yourself up, Buttercup. Whether you're freshly unhitched, just dipping your toesies back into the dating pool, or ready to dive into a new relationship, my new book, Midlife Priceless, A Dating Coach's Guide to Finally Doing Relationships Right, has you covered with new dating and relationship advice tailored to meet you wherever you are in your relationship journey. Join me, Jennifer Hurwitz, author of best-selling books, One Happy Divorce and Woulda, Coulda, Shoulda, as I share BS-free tips and laugh out loud personal anecdotes to help set you on the path toward finally doing dating and relationships right. Grab your copy of my new book, Midlife Priceless, at jenniferhurwitz.com. That's jenniferhurwitz.com. Good morning. Good morning. This is Doing Relationships Right. I'm Jennifer Hurwitz. I'm your host, every Tuesday and sometimes when I feel like it on a Friday, but I'm just thrilled to be here today. All things are good in May. May is a good month. I'm back. I'm here. I'm walking without a stent. Yeah, great. Okay. It's been a wonderful week, you guys. If you follow me, you know that I've been, having a few kidney issues, but I'm good and I'm here and I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled because I'm fangirl. I'm a fangirl and I've been following, Dr. Jaime Zuckerman for, I don't even know how long, and maybe stalking is the wrong word to use, but I'm obsessed with you, Dr. Jaime. And I call you Dr. Z. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Dr. Z, Dr. Z. Okay. You are like one of the smartest. I just think what you do, I love you. I'm honored that you're here. And I very rarely get all nervous and fangirly, but I'm a little nervous because what you do is so important. I'm going to read your bio a little bit. If you can hang on. So Dr. Jaime Zuckerman is a national expert in narcissistic abuse and a licensed clinical psychologist specializing in the treatment of adults with anxiety and mood disorders. She is a highly sought-after relationship coach for both men and women nationwide who are experiencing or have experienced narcissistic abuse in relationships of all types. Okay. Now I know this for sure because I follow you, but you've been in Vogue, you've been in Elle, you're in Shape, Women's Health, Washington Post, and Harvard Business Review. You have 2 books, and I'm telling you, when I question anything about any relationship I've been in, is he a narc? Is he not? Am I? Is my sister? Is my mom? I go to you. And I'm like, you're the one. You are the one. You have a podcast.
So
you're fantastic. So the other day I was watching one of your reels and it hit me really right in the face because I feel like people are over-diagnosing. They're on Google. They are using a WebMD to diagnose their people, and they think everyone is a narcissist. And this is happening a lot. And then they're doing this well, he has narcissistic traits and she has traits and this one has traits. And oh my God, Dr. Z, hi, can you help us?
Hi.
Help us.
Yes. Thank you for having me.
I'm so happy to have you here. I'm just so happy to have you here. So you just go. I'm going to shut up because my listeners are like, Jennifer, please stop talking and let Dr. Z do her thing. So what do you think? What is going on with this world? What do we do? Is everybody a narcissist?
No.
Okay, good. There we go.
No,
okay.
Thankfully, or else we'd all be in serious trouble. No. So I think what happened, at least from my perspective, was, I've always kind of seen this in my practice, worked with people who are in these types of relationships, and it kind of just grew organically years ago. But I think what happened, one, because social media tends to be a playground for narcissists, which we can get into, but also during the pandemic, when everyone was stuck at home, that's when people couldn't get out. That's when people who were in these situations, their only outlet was social media. And so people were, they were doing it before, but again, just from my standpoint, the stories and the, especially survivor stories were really starting to come out, and people were reading these things saying, oh my God, that's my life. Because when you are dealing with true narcissistic personalities that are in a relationship, it follows a very textbook model. And so when you hear it, it doesn't matter really, like, it's like if you take the characters out and the underlying functions are all it's exactly the same. And so people really started to have their questions answered and people started to feel validated. And the biggest thing was they realized they weren't crazy and they weren't alone. I think what tended to happen was, listen, we've all been through really horrible, shitty relationships. We've all been through really difficult breakups. And I think it's easy to pinpoint toxic behavior as narcissistic, right? And that's not the case. There's plenty of toxic relationships where people are exhibiting horrible toxic patterns, even abusive patterns that aren't necessarily narcissistic. And there's a big difference because you actually, from a treatment perspective, you actually go about treating it extremely differently. And so that's the danger, I think, a lot of times when people misdiagnose this or self-diagnose this, is that the treatment is so different and you have to be very careful.
That's really interesting to me because I swear, like, I talk to, a lot of my girlfriends, they're like, he's a narcissist. I married a narcissist. I divorced a narcissist. That's just not the case. And I feel like saying, are you sure? And I don't want to hurt their feelings. I mean, as a coach,
Sure.
but I don't want to say, but like you were saying in your reel, like, if you don't mind going into it, but like there are specific things that there's differences and major differences, and people can have the traits, sure, but they come and go, right? Is that what you were going to explain that to us?
Yeah, sure. So, we all have, I don't like saying healthy narcissism because I feel like that invalidates people's experiences who don't. So I know some professionals will say it, but I think everybody has traits that look, let's say on the surface, mildly narcissistic, meaning, even if you look at, like we were talking about my toddler before, like if you look at toddlers, right? Or you look at, my 10-year-old, they're so self-focused, right? And so it looks like they're, quote, narcissistic because all they care about is themselves, but it's developmentally age appropriate. You look at people with anxiety. Anyone that has anxiety or depression is very inward focused, self-absorbed in a non-narcissistic, non-malignant, non-manipulative manner. It's just we're very in our own heads and we think everyone's worried about the same things we are, and we think everybody's looking at us when they're not. And so, but that's benign, right? It may impact our functioning, but it's not malicious to anybody else. So, that sometimes can look quote, self-centered or narcissistic when you're doing something that you are a specialist in, right? Like us talking about this right now, we may kind of pluck our narcissistic strings a little bit more or whatever the case may be, but we know and have the ability and empathy to know when to kind of reel it back in. We know when we are overdoing it and need to bring it back. If I'm going to talk to, my neurologist, I'm not going to make it like I know more than them because I don't. And I have that understanding, right? So we all have these traits and they come out at different times when appropriate and when necessary. We have the awareness that we are moving in that direction and we know when to bring it back in. We know that if we're doing something and we hurt somebody in the process, we don't want to hurt somebody else. And maybe on the surface, we have patterns. So let's say people who grow up in a household where they have a narcissistic parent. And I always say narcissistic parents don't necessarily breed narcissistic children, dependent children. It varies dramatically. So let's say you grow up in a household with narcissistic parents, whatever. You may develop patterns of behavior that look narcissistic because we model what we know. And I have a lot of patients that come to me and they're concerned they're narcissistic when in reality, they're modeling these patterns. And when you bring it, and this is the key difference, when you bring those patterns to their attention and you explain the impact these patterns are having on the people that they love, a non-narcissistic response would be like, oh shit, wow, I didn't realize I was doing that. Okay, I want to change this. Even if it takes a really long time and it's brutally uncomfortable and they go back and forth on it, they don't want to be doing that, right? That's the difference. A narcissist, not only will they not care that they have these patterns, they believe that it's the other people's issues if they have a problem with them. That's the difference. And that's why, narcissists, they won't come to therapy. They don't think anything's wrong with them. It's everybody else's fault. And they'll convince you of that. So that's really the kind of like the essential key difference.
Which is, it's so funny because I'm listening to you going, that just makes sense, right? A narcissist isn't going to come to the table and say, oh, it's me. They're going to say it's you, or, so that's a really, my son is on the spectrum. And so he's very egocentric, right? But it's in a healthy, like, I'll say to him,
I just had this conversation.
Yeah. So like, it's a very fine line between like, is it spectrum? Is it, neurodivergent? Is it,
yes.
And it's a lot of times, like, he knows, like, he's like, it's my thing, journalism
yes.
and sports and whatever.
Yes.
It's his thing. And then like, he knows when it's someone else's thing, he has to turn, it's hard for him. It's difficult, but he's not
yes.
a narcissist, right? But it's very interesting.
I actually had, so autism spectrum disorders are actually, often misdiagnosed as narcissism.
Yes, thank you for saying that. I appreciate that.
And I just had this conversation with somebody because somebody had commented this on one of my reels, and I was so happy they did it because, again, this is a perfect example. On the surface, the behaviors may look similar: self-focused, inability to understand other people's opinions or whatever, and they may appear to lack empathy, but when you look at the function of their behavior, so not what they're saying and not how they're saying it, but the underlying function or the reason why they're saying what they're saying has nothing to do with deliberate manipulation, deliberate gaslighting, deliberate control. If anything, it's the total opposite. And if you tell them that's what they're conveying, they'll be horrified. They won't want that. Now, they may have difficulty adjusting it, but not because they think they're entitled to that behavior and it's the other person's fault. It's because neurologically, there's something going on. Cognitively, there's something going on. The function is not the same.
I appreciate
and that's why it's so important to not diagnose people and to really understand the differences, because you can do a lot of damage. You can imagine if you think somebody on the autism spectrum is a narcissist, true narcissistic personality disorder, you're going to respond to them different.
Which I did.
You're going to isolate them more, right?
Yeah.
You're going to cut them off.
Even your own child.
Really
even your own child.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Absolutely.
Because you think to yourself, I did. I mean, Jonah, my son, he's my own. And I thought, oh my God, am I raising? So when he went to therapy and we worked it, like, it's very interesting. I'm so glad you shared that because it is really important, because I always thought, is he just an asshole? Is it, am I raising this? And I realized, like, no, is honest to God. Like, it's just, he doesn't. And then when I bring it to his attention, I'm like, Jay, look, this is, and I had to teach him how to be empathetic. And he was like, oh my, that makes sense, Mom. I do have to apologize for that.
Yes. And so I know people listening are going to say, okay, well, maybe the person I thought who had narcissistic personality disorder isn't, and they're on the spectrum. And so my thing to you is narcissists very easily constantly fake empathy. So I say this because that's why, again, it's important to know the difference, right? Like, you take your son to a behavior specialist and they explain it to you, and you see the patterns and you see the progress. So again, and you see this also with antisocial personality disorder. There was studies done where, they would have people go into the prison system and they would teach empathy. What ended up happening was they learned the empathy skills, but then they used it as a way to manipulate. So yeah, so narcissists routinely fake empathy. So for those of you who are listening, who are like, oh wait a minute, no, they're not an ass. I kind of caution you to not jump on that.
Right. To not like switch your diagnosis.
Correct.
Oh, goody. He's not a narcissist. Right?
Exactly. Correct.
Right. I got you. That's something I would do. I'd be like, oh, no.
And listen, understandably so, because otherwise you look at these behaviors and it's so mind blowing because you're like, it's so, excuse my language, but it can appear so batshit crazy.
Oh, please, you're on my podcast. You can please swear all you want. We love it here. Yeah, I mean, it is bad. I can't even, sometimes I hear stories of people like, and I'm like, what did that?
Yes.
What? Like,
oh yeah.
And
yes.
And I think that's why it's so hard. And you also did an amazing reel on this too, and a podcast about it, why it's so difficult for people to understand how someone could stay in that type of relationship.
Yes.
But we do, because I did. I thought like maybe it was me.
It's so psychologically jarring and so, it comes on in such a nuanced way. I explain it like it's like a leaky faucet. You may not notice it, but then you finally notice it when your floor is like, 5 inches with water, right? And you're drowning. And so it's very deliberate and slow and methodical and planned. And yes, they know what they're doing. That's the question I get all the time. Do they know what they're doing? Yes, they do know what they're doing. It actually has nothing to do with you. They're going to do this with you, with the next one, with the next one. I mean, it's such a pattern. And the reason why I know people assume that it's them is because if you look at the behavior alone, it's so mind-blowing and so confusing. And then on top of that, to know that it's done deliberately is like, what? And so when you explain it to somebody else, their natural reaction is going to be, are you sure? That's just like, that's so out there. Like, there's no way that.
Yeah. Okay, y'all, we need to talk about the holidays and divorce. It's a stressful time for families, especially when alcohol is involved, and our friends at SoberLink want to help. SoberLink has teamed up with divorce and family law experts to provide information that offers peace of mind during the holidays. For those who still haven't heard about SoberLink, it is the solution if you are going through a divorce and custody case involving alcohol. Whether you are falsely accused of alcohol use or are concerned about your child's safety because of the other parent's alcohol use, SoberLink can help. SoberLink works to keep children safe, and its technology makes it a gold standard in alcohol monitoring systems. Don't miss out on SoberLink's free guide for the upcoming holiday season. Request it today at www.soberlink.com/DRR. That's soberlink.com. And sometimes I sit there and I'm like thinking, I have to stop myself from people that I love that have been in, because I just can't even fathom. And so can you give us, I don't know, some tips or some, not red flag, I guess, whatever you want. There are some weird things you also note that the narcissists do that. I love that reel too. I just love you. But there's some weird things that people do that you don't even think about. And I'm like,
so that's why I do that, because if I just, and listen, like you can Google the DSM clinical symptoms for NPD, right? But I find that doesn't help people, right? Like it helps me but for people who are not in the mental health field, or even, honestly, even people that are in the mental health field, it's such a nuance-based thing that I think it's easier to tell people what it looks like on a day-to-day basis than give them these broad clinical, symptoms that maybe make no sense. And I see this a lot too when people, and understandably so, people may suggest go to couples therapy. You don't go to couples therapy with a narcissist. Period. End of story.
Oh,
ever.
Wow. Say that again. You don't go to couples therapy.
You do not go to couples therapy. You get your own therapy. And here's why. And here's a major red flag. When you go to couples therapy with a narcissist, and I understand why you would, but if you're in a therapy session with a narcissist and the therapist does not pick it up, here's what's going to happen. You're going to be re-traumatized because now you're going to think you're even crazier, because if the therapist isn't thinking anything's wrong, then, well, yeah, it is you. 2, you are in no way, shape, or form going to speak your mind because you need to go home with this narcissist. You need to get in the car with the narcissist, which is a whole separate scary issue. And you need to go home, and you're already being abused, definitely emotionally and verbally, if not physically, if not sexually, definitely financially. You're not going to speak up in therapy. And the narcissist is going to do a damn good job of taking control, manipulating the therapist, doing everything they do because they're an expert at it. So if you don't understand narcissistic personality disorder in that very nuanced way, the therapist can do more damage than good, not intentionally, but they may not pick up on it. And so I will, though, have sometimes people go into couples therapy unknowingly, and the therapist will say and gently challenge the narcissist because they realize what's happening. So it may make the other person feel validated, right? And say like, all right, I'm not crazy, but that's rare. So you have to be careful with that. But as far as red flags, and I think this is important because I look at this as preventative medicine, because it's a hell of a lot easier not to get into it than it is to get out of it. So red flags. And here's the thing. When you're with a narcissist in the beginning, right, we all heard of love bombing, but I want to explain what love bombing
please.
is.
I think I know, but maybe I don't.
Because listen, it's anybody, me, you, anybody. It doesn't matter how smart you are. It doesn't matter how aware you are. anybody is susceptible to love bombing because they will do it in such a way that tricks you specifically, right? They will give you whatever it is they feel you're lacking. So it's not necessarily like extravagant gifts and all this stuff. It could very well be really this deep emotional connection early on because they know that that's something you've been missing, right? Because you tell them that, because you feel so comfortable with them. So signs early on are, if you hear the word soulmate, if you hear the word, the words, I've been waiting for you my whole life. I don't care how much it just like gives you butterflies or, how different this is. Nobody, I don't believe in soulmates, but nobody can think you're their soulmate when they don't even know what you're allergic to, what your middle name is, what your interests are, what your hobbies are. You have to take a step back. And you could be the most wonderful human in the world and have so much to offer. But nobody knows you enough to say, you're my soulmate. If you hear that early on in the relationship, I'm making a blanket statement run. And I know I'm going to hear people say, well, I met my soulmate on date. Great. You're in like the 0.001% and like wonderful, like mazel tov. Great, right? Mazel tov. Like great.
Doesn't happen. Yeah, I agree.
But it really doesn't. And so that's a huge red flag. The other red flag is when they talk about their past relationships, if they are notoriously the victim in all of them. Oh, my AirPod just fell out. If they are sending you flowers, gifts very early on, right? Red flag. Because here's the thing. If they're sending you flowers to your office or to your home very early on, it's to, one, mark their territory.
Absolutely.
Because people will see them. Yep. Two, if you're dating anybody else, that's how they're going to find out because they may sign the card, love me. Oh, I don't know who this is from. So you're going to ask and they're going to find out, right? So it's,
I never thought of that. I'm a
they may say, I had so much fun with you last night. Like, let's go out tonight. Oh, wait, do you have plans? Oh, what are you doing? Can you cancel them? So they may ask you nothing about yourself on the dates, or they may ask you a shit ton. And then the next date, ask you again because they don't remember anything because they didn't. They are going to ask you to move in really quickly, give up your apartment, tell you, oh, you know what? Like, just put it all on my credit card. Don't worry about it. I'm going to take care of you one day. Like, don't even worry about working or cut down your hours. No, what they're doing is they don't want to take care of you. They want to control you. And so it's the start of financial abuse, right? Or you'll take a drive and they'll show you a house and be like, that's going to be our house one.
That's my favorite.
Yep. And you know what movie? So there's a movie with J-Lo. It's called Enough. And I rarely recommend movies about narcissism because I think it's all bullshit, but there's a couple. It's Enough. It is such a good depiction of love bombing. Okay. Also, Tell Me Lies, the Hulu series, excellent on narcissism. I did a whole thing on that. Love it. But Enough really does a good job of showing you the grooming process of how he researched her. He researched her limitations, her weaknesses, her strengths, and they will do a really good job of highlighting your strengths and making you feel so good. And then what happens is once they know they have you, so they've made you trust them, if you find yourself telling them your deepest, darkest secrets, your traumatic upbringing, your inner workings really early on. They're doing it so that they can kind of store it away in a file. And then when they start to switch, which sometimes is sudden, sometimes gradual, that's what they're going to use against you.
Absolutely. It's so fucked up.
It's so fucked up.
I mean, it's absolutely the most fucked up thing.
Yes.
And it's so weird because when it happens, you can't, I remember like thinking, is this happening? Like, why do
it seems you're going to get this surreal feeling, like almost like this, like, wait, what? And then what's going to happen is they're going to apologize really fast. And they're going to say, oh my God, I'm sorry. It was my meds, or I didn't sleep, or I was under a lot of stress. Right. I'm so sorry. And then you're going to get a gift.
Then you're going to get, it's like the honeymoon thing where they beat you up and then they give you a present. It's
exactly.
Yes.
And so these are the things to look for, and again, people be like, I'm so dumb. I'm so stupid. I can't believe it. You're not. Anyone who is love bomb is going to feel so good. It feels so good. That's the problem.
And especially right after a divorce, right? You come out this,
after a divorce,
and you're vulnerable.
Especially if you're a single mom.
And I was a single mom,
vulnerable.
and I was like, it was nice to be whisked off to whatever. Of course he did. And he thought, he took me and whatever. And I flew, blah, blah, blah. And I thought, oh my God, this is it. And it's so easy now. I just came out of this, and now he's going to, oh my God, it was horrific.
Yeah.
And what
I'm sorry I went through that. It's hard.
You know what? I didn't even, at the time, I thought, and like I saw, his kids' hockey stuff didn't fit in my trunk. So he made me sell my car.
Yes.
My car wasn't big enough for his kids' hockey stuff.
Yes. Yeah. Or they don't get a car. They give up their car so that you are responsible now for their every waking moment. And now they have control over your schedule because they know where you are all the time.
I didn't even think about it. I mean, it's so crazy because I tried to block it out. You try to just,
of course.
I mean, it was just,
well, because you also think you're going to be the one to change them.
I did.
Different with you.
Oh, I thought I was the one. I thought like, this was it.
You thought,
Oh yeah. And everyone told me.
And then when you can't fix them, you feel like something's wrong with you.
I did. It was awful. Yeah, it was just awful. And, he wanted me to post pictures of his kids on Facebook.
Yes.
Immediately, my friends were like, why are you posting pictures? Like, why have you even met his kids? And I'm like, well, he says this is what to, I was just so manipulated.
Yes.
It was
that's a really good thing to point out. They are going, if they have kids, you're going to meet them really
I did.
quick.
I met them in minutes. Went on a vacation to Mexico. Like, it was just like so fucked up. And I thought like, and even my husband were really good friends. And he was like, Jen, something is not right. And I'm like, no, it's great. It's fine. Then I was like, it was like hit with a ton of bricks, and it was just awful. It's just, the feeling is just so even the best people, like I felt like something was wrong with me,
Yeah. That's what they do. So when you feel that you can't exist or function without them, which is why when I see people, so I see people at all stages of this, but when I see people who either are slowly getting out or got out, because the post-separation abuse can be worse than the abuse you endure while in it. And people who get out of it, I hear this, it's so upsetting. Like, it really is so upsetting. They'll say, I feel like a shell of my former self. And what's so upsetting about it is these, mostly women, but men too, women can absolutely be narcissists. They will say, they'll say, I was this because narcissists don't go for weak people. They go for people who are independent financially because they're going to take your money.
They
the
love
more successful, attractive, smart, the more like in the social scene you are, the more you have at risk, the more supply and pleasure they get from knocking you down.
Crazy, isn't it?
Yes.
It's just
so you see these women afterwards and everyone's like, oh, well, their self-esteem so low. Well, yeah, but it didn't start out like that. So these women at the end and men will feel like shells of their former selves. I have a dear friend who went through this. So I had a front row seat to all of it. It was horrific. And she said to me once, and it was so like, and I do this for a living, and I still hear things where I'm like, oh God. She said to me, I don't even know what side of the bed I like to sleep on. And I was like, holy shit. Like, that's such a benign thing.
You know what? I totally understand.
You were,
I totally understand.
You don't even know. She didn't know what music do I like. She was fed a narrative. You're going to like this food. You're going to dress like this. She wasn't allowed to wear heels. She wasn't allowed to do that. Right. She wasn't allowed to work. And then, she was an attorney and she wasn't allowed to work because he was jealous. And then after the divorce, made it like she didn't want to work. And it was like, oh my God, man. Like, so you see all these things, but for her to say, I don't know what side of the bed I like to sleep on. I was like, oh, it was like a gut punch. It's like, and one of my patients said to me, I don't even know what flavor ice cream I like. It's like, it's to that extent.
It's just, oh gosh, I'm just so glad you're here because I really feel like people, they need you. Like, you're just so like, it's just, I wish everyone could see you.
We'll get better. And I always tell people this, it takes a long time. It's traumatic. You will not be the same person you were before. Like, people always say, I want to get back to who I was. You'll get back to a version of who you were, because to think that this doesn't change you, I think really invalidates people's experiences. Like, it does change you. It changes your brain neurologically, right? So you have to kind of have some grace and patience with yourself, because it's a process, but you will get better. You will be healthy. You will pick healthier, but you really need therapy. Like, you can't do it alone.
And then also, Dr. Z, do you think that people, women, men, that they're able to, and I know that you're going to say what you're going to say, but we can trust again. We'll be able to trust again. A lot of my I coach my dating coaching, even dating. They're like, well, I was in such a horrible relationship. I don't know if I can do this again. I don't know if my picker's broken.
Yeah.
I think that when you say, you go into relationships with baggage, everyone has baggage, but I do think that
Everyone
when you
has
come out of a relationship that's with a narcissist, your baggage is different. I just think it is.
Your baggage is different.
I think your baggage is different.
Your baggage is different, right? It just is. And I think that's what I was saying with it changes you. And there's a level of acceptance that you have to have, which is really difficult for people because they feel like almost like broken in a way, but you're not broken. Will you always have trust issues to some extent? Yeah. I mean, the reality is, yeah, maybe, probably, but that's not a bad thing. If you think about it, it's like you were in survival mode for so long that if you have these slight trust issues, always, not major, that'll improve. It's almost like your body's doing what it's supposed to do in a weird way because it's making sure you survive. So your fight or flight, like the goal of therapy is to reduce that fight or flight mode, that you're not constantly hyper vigilant so that you're, not getting physically sick all the time and all this stuff. But I think the thing is to know when. It's not so much a trust thing. It's knowing when to be able to trust your own instincts and judgment, which for someone who's been through this is really difficult. And that's what I help people on. You will be able to trust yourself, but you may always have to take a little bit of a pause. And that's okay. That's not such a bad thing. It's a bad thing if it prevents you from getting into healthy relationships.
Exactly. So if you'll do me a favor, I want you to come back because I want to talk about co-parenting with a narcissist.
Oh, geez, yeah.
You'll come back because I think that's a whole other, like, that's a big question. And I think that like my listeners are dying for that also. And I think you're like just the perfect person to touch on that topic if you'll come back another time.
I actually love talking about that because you can get really creative with it. And once you realize how to, I don't like saying manipulate, but once you realize how to play the playbook,
yes,
you feel so empowered. So I love talking about that.
Okay, good. Because I have friends that are in really, really fucked up co-parenting with a narcissist and they just need help. And I think a lot of people need help. And there are very few specialists and doctors who really know how to do it. And I would love to have you come back.
No, I'm happy to.
Okay, I would love that. Okay, so first of all, where can everybody find you and can you help everybody?
Yes, I can help you. So my Instagram, I post a ton of stuff about this, about anxiety, depression, especially during Mental Health Month. I'm on Instagram, Dr. Z Psychologist, and my website's drjaimezuckerman.com. If you're in Pennsylvania, we have a therapy practice, the Z Group, so you can find that as well on my Instagram and my website. And my books, Find Your Calm and Find Good Habits, you can find on Amazon, Target, Barnes & Noble.
And everything will be in the show notes. We'll put everything in the show notes so you can find Dr. Z. And this was amazing. And I loved
my kids made me get on TikTok. So I'm on TikTok.
Oh my God, I have to follow you on TikTok. Your kids, I love it. I love it. I know my kids are like, Mom, can you get off TikTok? My boys are like,
no, mine were the opposite. They're like, can we do a TikTok? And I'm like,
That's the difference. Just wait. Just wait till yours are at Syracuse. And they're both, and they're like, Mom, you're embarrassing us. I'm like, okay, you know what? It just changes everything. It's my job. It's my job. Oh my gosh. Okay, everybody. I'm just so glad that you were here, Dr. Z. I appreciate you so much. And everybody else, do something great in May. Get out there. And it's Mental Health Awareness Month. It is, right, May? So do something that's good for your body, that's good for your soul, that's good for your mind, and check up on someone who might need to be checked up on, and just check up on everybody and be a good human. And that's it. And I don't know, that's it I got for you today. Check out my new book. What is it called again? Oh yeah, Midlife Priceless, a dating coach's guide to finally doing relationships right. I love you guys. Thanks for listening. Peace, love, and so much truth. Hey, thanks for listening to Doing Relationships Right. Don't forget, if you enjoyed the show, subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast episodes. And please grab my books, One Happy Divorce and Woulda, Coulda, Shoulda, on my website, jenniferhurwitz.com. And look out for my new book, all about doing dating right, coming soon. As usual, thanks for listening. See you next week. Peace, love, and truth.